You're retro trekking with the Caramel Apples, a podcast where the topic is rarely about apples. This week is all about one of our favorite throwback youth focused 80s television program, 21 Jump Street. Now, here's your host, Kennedy Rizzo and Cooper Lee. Okay, Coop is chomping at the bit this week. She has been so excited to go over one of her favorite shows of all time, which is.
Oh my goodness. It's a long time coming. I'm so happy this day has finally arrived. But for 21 Jump Street to be our focus today,
Yeah,
I am so excited.
I bet you are. Yeah.
Yes, it's so good. It was such a good show.
That's what Coop and I share a lot of these retro memories of different music and shows and movies. But
Yeah.
I did like 21 Jump Street, but I don't think I'm quite the degree of rabid fan that Coop is. This is her jam, so I'm excited for her.
Yes. I mean I'll try to keep it to a minimum, okay? I mean, I'll try to keep a lid on it as much as I can,
No,
but
I
no
think you should go
promises.
Caramel Wild. You just go Caramel Wild.
I like it.
Me too. Okay, so where do we need to start with 21 Jump Street, right?
Yeah, let's get started, huh?
Okay, so 21 Jump Street was, again, it was a youth-focused drama back in the 80s that covered cases of an undercover police unit,
Yeah.
and it was composed of four youthful looking, undercover officers, and they had a devoted captain
Yeah.
that they tailored cases around. They were like specialized in youth crime.
Yeah. Um it, it was such a neat spin on things. I know it's not like unique, but it's not something they approach all the time, especially back then.
Yeah.
So yeah, great
I
idea.
I think the draw was the target audience though. Like you
Yeah.
felt like, oh wow, because they're probably, early Gen Xers, and
Yeah.
that was us. That was us, so
That
you
was
got
us.
people. Yes. And they're pulling this off, too cool for school, which was their tagline, right?
Too cool for TV.
Yeah. And this was the brainchild of creators Stephen J. Cannell and Patrick Hasberg. So
Yes.
they hit this one out of the park, didn't they, Cooper?
They did. I mean, I would say, like, the whole little bumper for Canal, right?
Yes.
Like, that's how you got to know it. It is seared in memory because of that show.
And many shows, yeah, like you could see that, but yeah, it was for 21 Jump Street.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So cool. So let's give some fun facts while we're at it, right?
Yes.
There's so many gems for this one. But one that's really cool is the fact that this was actually based on a real life undercover unit that was in LA, California at the time.
Oh no, that's interesting. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's another nice little gem. So the song, iconic, right? Just like the show.
It is.
Um, if you know the show, you would know that. And some people probably knew that Holly Robinson Pete actually sang the vocals. But some people might not know that the ones who said jump, that was Johnny Depp. and Peter DeLuise. Oh, so awesome. Bravo, bravo.
Yes, it is. So let's do that. I said jump
Jump
down
down
on
on
Jump
Jump Street.
Street. That's cool.
So this show led the Sunday evening lineup during the first season of the show and was one of the first Fox hour-long dramas.
Mm.
And Fox definitely wore its heart on its sleeve. Kind of like the WB now. Fox wanted to lure in the teenage audience with its good looking young stars. Check that box off.
That's right. Check.
And fortunately for those stars, 21 Jump Street was a rather good vehicle and stood on its own merits.
Yeah, kind of like the Mod Squad for the 80s. The teens in 21 Jump Street were cops. Hot, hip cops.
Yeah.
Cops. Okay. Don't even have that much to say, and I'm still screwing it up.
Oh boy. Yeah. They would infiltrate schools, you know, drug rings, gangs, you know, wherever teenagers were in trouble. As you mentioned, unlike the Mod Squad, though, the storylines were always passable and quite often excellent. Almost every episode touched upon subjects that were taboo for the big three networks and still are actually.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Like some of those were AIDS, statutory rape, drug use, abortion, child abuse. And, it presented a moralistic way, but without being maudlin. So, the show kind of faltered during its last few seasons. I guess that's something you can just kind of see happening because when you got certain stars that are rising to the top and you got others that are, really we're about the cause. We're here for this show. This is our main thing going right now. We don't want to
Mm-hmm.
have our hands in any other pots. um, it's going to change the dynamic of the show.
Right.
Whereas when everybody's there and this is their first really big gig, and and I'm sure there's other factors along the way that might change the dynamic, but things were starting to change as the seasons went on. And the execs, they were starting to push other stars into the spotlight, um, hoping that they could kind of cash in with a spinoff or whatever.
That's always Hollywood's aim, isn't it?
It really is. And I don't think they would do it if it didn't work sometimes.
Yeah, but
But
that's
I
a
think,
small sometimes.
thank you. Yes, it's like, this is not the norm.
Yeah.
I mean, and they do it with movies too. Oh, anyways.
Exhaustion, utter exhaustion.
Yeah. And as we're talking about it, another fun fact is that one of the characters his name was Dennis Booker in the show,
Oh, yes.
and that was played by Richard Grieco. And he was supposed to be killed off at the end of the third season, but because he proved popular enough in the show, they kept him around, and then they worked on the spinoff, which was called
Interesting.
Booker. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Did you watch that?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not.
I just thought I'd ask.
Hey, valid question. Cool, right? No
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little later of why I did not.
Okay, okay.
Here, I'm building it up like it's some big major secret, but we'll get into it later.
Sounds good.
So with Richard Grieco, he was being very heavily promoted, because, as we said, Depp was wanting to branch off and do other things, and he definitely was the star of the show. So they're like, who's our next cash cow? So Grieco took that place. And, the sad thing is, audiences just really didn't care.
Yeah, not like Depp, huh?
Right. Yeah. Because with so many things, if it's the original that got people in, that's the original that's going to keep people there.
Yeah.
And when
Mm-hmm.
you change it too much, it's no longer the original. It's something else entirely. So just call it what it is. Um, but at the same time, Grieco did become a teenage heartthrob for a while. But he never achieved the momentum to carry his career skyward.
Okay.
This was kind of like the 1, 2, 3 punch thing. This was pretty much it, I believe. I think he maybe starred in some maybe TV movies and stuff, but I don't think he ever got to where. Oh, wait, I stand corrected. Um, yeah, so I think he did some other maybe smaller movies and things, and he did actually have a cameo appearance in a little known movie called Night at the Roxbury. That is, a little bit out of our parameters, but he was Richard Grieco in it, and he was known for being Richard Grieco.
The king of 21 Jump Street, Richard Grieco.
And I believe there's a spot in the movie where they're actually watching him playing Booker on 21 Jump Street.
It is. I was just getting ready to say that.
Hey, all right.
Yes, Doug is watching him on TV in the guest house when he banished himself to the guest house.
So crazy. That movie's nuts.
It is. We'll have to do that one too.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Grieco's lady. Okay. So, when you got a show that's really pushing the stars at this point, the storyline kind of took a backseat to the characters preening. And, the end result sadly ends up being faltering ratings and cancellation.
Well, yeah, until it became an actor's showcase, though. 21 Jump Street was probably the best drama on TV,
Oh, yeah.
much like the Mod Squad of the 80s. But it took another 20 years, another generation before we were ready for another cop show with young people as undercover cops dealing with crime and other social, darker issues. But then, where Mod Squad of the 60s left off, we have 21 Jump Street. It took the ball and ran with it in the 80s.
Yeah. I have to say personally, I think 21 Jump Street was a much better show.
Okay.
Little bias here, but it certainly had at least one cast member who became a mega star, and that being Johnny Depp.
Oh, here we go, archivers. This is what she was waiting for.
Yeah. When Depp left the show, it sputtered on for a while, but ultimately died when other regulars left as well.
She said sputtered. She was serious.
Oh, man. Let me tell you. I remember watching the very first pilot episode. It was a 2-parter, but I remember it airing on TV. And I remember thinking, this is my new favorite show.
Really?
Yeah. For reasons I just spoke about. The storyline was cool too, but I was like, who is that?
Coop, you are 8 up. You are Carvel 8 up.
I know I'm not alone in feeling that way. And unlike you with your secret crush on Mr. Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, he's hot.
I think I made mine very known. I was not quiet about mine.
Yeah, she'd get his movies, and when it, like, especially after 21 Jump Street, like there was a couple movies Coop owned, and I think she had a poster too, something like that.
Oh yeah, like the teenage heartthrob magazines and stuff. Oh yeah, I was spending my little coin on those during school.
Coop's like, money well spent. She shuts the locker.
Yeah, there was zero regrets on that. Um, but that first pilot episode, not to go too long on, Johnny, but um the first pilot episode was really cool because it really did bring you into the world of 21 Jump Street.
Mm,
Like they struck gold with this.
okay.
Because they explained the fact that here he was, he made it like top of his class of the academy, he graduated and all that. He's ready to get started in real police work, right?
Right, right.
And he's not really up to snuff. He's not really what they're looking for. They don't feel he'd be taken seriously and things like that. So that just leads straight away into, well, this is what you want to do. This is your passion. This was made for you. And it's like right from Jump Street, it just melded well. I think they struck gold with this show, and the premise and all the show ideas after that, for the most part, really, it was just very good hour long TV show. It was just so good.
Oh, that's why we talk about that. That's why we do this, because we love what the nostalgia swells from our memories of shows, TVs, movies, music, and all that. It really takes you back when you have those kind of connections.
Yes. So, I really did like how the show morphed and changed with the main components being the main stars that were in it. I'm glad for as long as they were in it, this the story still seemed pretty cohesive.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
there were some things that were kind of like, okay, now they're grasping at straws, because I think he was really ready to not be doing the show at that point. So it's like, well, he was in it less and less. And Officer Tom Hansen in 21 Jump Street, but he did not want to turn into the juvenile teen idol forever,
Okay. Hmm.
and that makes perfect sense. I mean, he wasn't even a teen anymore when he did the show, I don't believe. So, you know, obviously he's getting older. So,
Yeah, they don't
um,
want to be typecast.
exactly.
Hmm.
But for what it was, they created one fantastic body of work, and he was one of the best players all around. So,
Okay. All right. No,
um,
no, no. Argument from Cooper.
yeah, he knew what he was capable of back in the day, and we know it too.
Okay, Coop. So you mentioned that Johnny Depp was Officer Tom Hansen.
Yes.
So can you run down the three officers and the captain's name before we get into?
Yes.
Okay.
Judy Hoffs was played by Holly Robinson Pete.
Okay.
Doug Penhall was played by Peter DeLuise.
Deloise.
Harry Truman Aoki was Dustin Nguyen, and Adam Fuller was Steve Williams, and Richard Janko was their first captain. He was played by Frederick Forrest. And two others that I think are worth mentioning are Sal Banducci.
Mm.
His nickname was Blowfish. He was the maintenance man of 21 Jump Street. And his real name is Sal Janko. And then you have Dennis Booker, of course, which was Richard Grieco.
The king of 21 Jump Street, Richard Grieco.
Coop, I was surprised that Dustin Nguyen didn't break out bigger from 21 Jump Street, as well as, like branching out in other areas of acting.
Yeah. Actually, I am a little surprised by that too. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he really should have had a great career as an Asian leading actor.
Yeah.
He had the looks and talent, and definitely he had some martial arts skill.
Yeah, I like you said, he had definitely framed for being very popular in the 80s. I remember he would be in those same magazines that Johnny was in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I will just, didn't mean to cut you off, but I just want to add this real quick. I think that although we just love almost everything about the 80s, things, especially in Hollywood, were still a little bit on the primitive side.
Yeah.
So Mr. Nguyen, he played his character very well.
Yes.
But like I think the mindset of the culture and stuff back then, like he could have become a leading man as an Asian.
Yeah.
I don't think people were ready at that time. Hollywood wasn't ready at that time. And
Yeah.
I have noticed in recent years that has become a bigger thing, and I love seeing it.
Yeah, it's definitely a change.
I love it.
Yeah. And like you said, so much of a change that you notice it.
Yeah.
Um, because I literally, I loved Johnny at the time.
Well, here we go.
But I love the fact that Holly was the main girl, right? Holly.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got some melanin in her skin. She's very pretty.
Love it.
And I wanted them to get together. The whole show run, I wanted them to get together. And I think had that show been made today, that probably would have been a serious possibility. I hated it when they bring in their different love interests and it was never the two of them. I hated that.
Yeah, I remember that happened. It was almost like an understanding, but they'd always just miss it
Yes.
back then. And again, we just said that. I don't think society or culture was ready for that at the time, and Hollywood didn't want to gamble on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were all like, mix it up.
Yeah, shame on them. For shame.
For shame. But yeah, so there was the pilot episode. They actually shared a hot dog. And I was like, oh, are they going to get together? Yeah, I thought that was so cool. Yeah, because they had a little flirty something going on. Like you said, they get so close. And then there was another episode. I believe it was in season 3 or 4. It's probably 4. It was much later on. This was getting real close to when he was like bowing out gracefully.
Okay.
But she had something happen to her that was really, really traumatic. It was one of those really touchy subjects that can happen to women. I can happen to men too, but really happen to women.
I got what you're putting down. Okay.
Yes. And it happened to her. And she was on an undercover project. And he really was like coming to her aid. He was coming to stay at her apartment. He was, there was so many opportunities. I was like, they could just kiss already. Come on.
Yeah.
So I think that episode was the closest it ever got to where it seemed like this really could bud somewhere. But, he was so close to being off the show. So even if they tried to write it in at that time, it probably wouldn't have even got filmed. Who knows?
Gotcha. Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah. Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. If this episode entertained you, please share it and spread the word. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And now, back to the show. So kind of getting back on topic, I believe you had mentioned the Mod Squad earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's interesting because in a way, that was back in the 60s. And it's like the 60s handed off to the 80s in the person of, the original captain of Jumpstreet. And that was Frederick Forrest. He was Captain Richard Jenko, as we mentioned. And he was one weird dude. He was kind of like the hippie type of captain, like really laid back. Yeah. He was just of a different generation, and he was very, whatever you guys want to do, yeah, man, I'm cool. Let's do this. I'm right there with you, and he really wasn't like taking the reins of it, but they really did look to him as their captain. Like he had their full respect. but I don't think they really felt that his character worked in the show, the writers or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he was only in, I think, 5 to 6 episodes of season 1.
Oh, they weren't messing around, were
They
they?
were not. Yeah, he didn't even get to complete the season. Maybe they had a whole, let's talk about this, and maybe he couldn't come to. Maybe they wanted him to play different. Maybe he didn't want to. Who knows
Mm,
all that backstory, right? Um,
right.
but they did bring in Stephen Williams, as we mentioned, as Captain Adam Fuller, and I liked him in this role.
Okay.
I did. I like the fact that he was way more like, when he first got there, he was rigid, right? He was rigid, and they were like, "Oh, we don't know if we like you," because he was complete. They went from willy nilly, straight laced. Um, but he really did turn out to be like a role model for them. He was there to back them up if something went awry, and someone was calling him on the carpet. He was right there defending them, and I think they really came to respect him as well.
Oh, so he had more of a traditional feel, didn't he?
Absolutely, yes.
Nice, nice. Well, it's another nice thing and feature about these shows from the past are, before a lot of Hollywood celebrities, when they're in their early years, they didn't have big britches.
Yeah.
So a lot of them had cameo appearances, or not cameo, but like they invited them on the show for different story or plot lines.
Yeah.
And they're the faces that we've seen in other shows that became big names soon after that. Like um you think about Jason Priestley, he was in 21 Jump Street.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Brad Pitt.
Yes. Yes.
I think he did an episode or something like that back in the day.
Totally.
But outside of just the famous faces that we see, what I do remember of the show, I like the stories and the storylines very much.
Hmm.
And the series regulars were as human and as flawed as some of the kids that, they were dealing with. So it's like that's how they were able to infiltrate these spaces and either help them and investigate things.
Yeah. And they got pretty deep into those story characters too. Like
Mm-hmm.
while they were in the schools, like they were feeling the effects. They would be taking some of the stuff, They were like, one of my favorite characters was played between Tom Hansen and Doug Penhall, and they would play the McQuaid brothers. And they were just real rugged. They were rugged. They'd come in and they'd bully people, and they were running the schools. It's like, these are the new students and they're running things. What's happening here? But it was cool, and that those sorry, it's throwing me off. Um so like the McQuaid undercover alias was one that showed up in a lot of stories. And I think so many people identified with how they would play these characters out. Like, you would forget that they were cops, and you would be like, yeah, they're just these students in this school.
Yeah.
So,
And
so
that what you just described, that's what makes a good show. When you can fall into what's going on
yes,
and you're not sitting there trying to, I mean, you're like you're sitting there, you're an observer watching things unfold, you're entertained. That's what we used to be able to easily expect from any given retro television show, movie, and the like.
absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. That is exactly it.
But in Ode to You, Coop, Depp was the show.
Yeah. It,
Yeah, Johnny Depp was the show, but it really did start to affect things when he was, distracted, losing interest, and his heart wasn't really into it.
yeah.
So I think that the 21 Jump Street, the audience probably picked up on that he was like, I'm ready to buy moves.
Yeah.
And when he ended up leaving, as you said, and then the other regulars, they probably love chilling out and acting together.
Yeah.
Um, they left too, so that just kind of left the show in a really strange limbo for a time, which ultimately led to its cancellation.
Which is surprising that they went ahead and moved forward with doing Booker, right? You would think they'd kind of get a hint from that, but okay, I guess try it while you can. But
Yeah. So, do you wish it had lasted longer? Like, if if Depp really was connected to it toward the end, if he had stayed, do you think that that would have made it better for him as an actor? Or you think he's just fine as he is?
You know, I think it probably would have went either way. I think he was going straight to the top, so I don't think it really would have been a bad thing if he stuck with it. Um, I do wish that, because here, fast forward to our time frame, and they have not remade, but they have made movies, with the name 21 Jump Street. And I wish if they were going to do a movie, it had been back then with the originals.
Okay.
I think that really would have catapulted him even further. He wanted to be a movie star, and he would have been a movie star straight
Well,
away.
now we have Jack Sparrow. I mean, that's really like, that's the first character that comes to my mind. I'm sure a lot of other, starstruck fans, they think Johnny Depp equals Jack Sparrow. So
Isn't that crazy?
it is.
Like, they probably would never. I mean, obviously, if you do research, and the internet makes it so easy now to find out some things in history about people. But yeah, it's like, oh no, his prime was in 21 Jump Street. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
think that is by far my favorite character he's played.
Okay. And the reason being is he was more serious in that than he was in his movies and stuff. Like, I mean, he comes off like quirky and stuff in Pirates of the Caribbean, and even when he was in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yes, yeah.
Which, I mean, I like Pirates, but I mean, that Wonka one, oh, that was terrible.
And I do own it, but
To you.
I do.
Hard pass. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
But
I give him a shot. Pretty much most of the things he's in is like, well, if Johnny's in it, I'll give it a shot. But yeah, like I said, 21 Jump Street, I think, still is my favorite character for him.
you're just biased. Yes, you're like, happily.
Yes. And it's crazy because this was Fox's first serious drama. So it like really sets the stage for them. It set the stage for him,
Yeah.
and it was all aimed at a young audience. And we were happily privy to be part of that.
That's right. They were looking at us, Gen X.
Yeah. So, 21 Jump Street had a great cast. And we've already, kind of talked about all of them. And among that good cast members, they also had good writing. They had an innovative plot, that we touched on about, the youthful cops posing as these high school students, to capture a wide variety of criminals in the school systems, which is eye-opening, right?
It is. It is.
And the show lasted a few seasons on Fox without network infiltration like other major networks. And it lasted long enough to leave its mark on the fledgling network.
Now there are like a dozen shows like 21 Jump Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, but without the cleverness and the strive to be better than just the average shows on TV. In fact, the show was probably the first American drama on Fox to be filmed on location in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, to cut costs. So I think that's amazing. You said earlier, a fun fact, that it was based on an actual setup that was in LA.
Yeah, right.
But here, they're trying to be budget friendly. They're filming in British Columbia. It's okay. We're not mad.
Yeah. And which might even lend to the fact that here's another fun fact.
Ooh.
There was a cot that was featured in the holding cell in 21 Jump Street Chapel.
Yeah.
And on occasion, it was used by the actors to ensure that they would be on time for work. So if they were potentially out partying or maybe, flying back into town or whatever, rather than be late for work, they could just use the cot to sleep on.
That's brilliant.
That is brilliant, isn't it?
They're like, we're going to cater to these young people. They're going to work for us. We're going to make sure they work for us. Make them comfortable.
Make them comfy.
Yeah.
That's kind of how this did. It got real 80s real quick.
Oh,
Oh yeah, like on another level. Posters on the wall, things just it just had that. If you lived in the 80s, you know what we're talking about.
well, that's why this is awesome because that was a much better time. It translated in real life when we were living it. It
Yes.
also came out in pop culture, so that's completely cool.
Yeah. I mean, I love the fact that when you lived in the 80s, it was just what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And now when things are made to look like it was back in the 80s, they're trying to incorporate things, they find things, and it's like, but it still doesn't have the it of the 80s because we didn't have to try in the 80s. It just was what it was.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Coop.
Okay, I might have an answer.
So everything we always poo-pooing on remakes.
Yeah.
Okay, you are an avid fan of the original 21 Jump Street.
Yeah.
So they did remake it or updated it in 2012, I believe, with Channing Tatum
Yes.
and Jonah Hill.
Yeah.
Did you see it?
I did not.
Okay, I haven't either. Because I was just gonna see what you thought about because what you just described. How would you feel? Do you think that they hit? Well, you didn't see it. I just didn't know if you
Yeah.
thought that they patterned that well after the original show with the 80s theme.
I'll tell you this. Like, yeah, did not see it, but from the previews that I saw,
Yeah.
it looked like they were really going for a hard, strong comedy line.
Okay.
And not saying that, 21 Jump Street, they had some funny stuff going on, like the McQuaid brothers, they would be funny. Peter DeLuise is funny. But the show had a serious premise, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that the movie seemed like it really went on like just real comedic and like they just seem goofy, like they just don't know what they're doing, like kind of bumbling
Okay.
or whatever. And I personally don't think the characters were bumbling in the original show.
Okay. Yeah,
The
it's more dark and serious.
Yeah, yeah. So, maybe probably, my opinion of the movie could be completely skewed. That could have been previews just to help draw people in because they don't really know the show, maybe. But yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So let's ask the archivers. What you have you guys seen and compared? If you're fans of the original 21 Jump Street, what is your opinion on the 2012 and 2014 22 Jump Street renditions of what we're talking about? Yay or nay? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Let us know.
Oh, that is an amazing question. Awesome, 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 Kennedy.
But you know what Cooper's answer is? She has them on DVD, so you know which one she likes the best. She
And that's
cheated.
it. I
Yeah.
did. And the other thing about that, I have 4 seasons and there are 5. Yeah. And I told you, I'd tell you why that was.
Okay.
Officer Hanson.
Oh, we are shocked.
Right. I built it up so much. What a letdown, right?
No, they're all like, okay, confirmed. Check.
Oh my goodness. But in the beginning of the Fox network lineup, 21 Jump Street launched a unique way of looking at secondary schools with a great cast.
Mhm.
It was never awarded any Emmy, uh, which is should have been even nominated for best drama, right? But 21 Jump Street truly held its own. It did not shy away from subjects of the day like drugs, race, crime, etc. And it has such a great theme song.
I did like the song. Yeah.
Oh, so, so cool. And it just, even more so, the fact that they were singing it.
Yeah.
It
Uh
just cohesive. Love it.
huh.
It's, the great actors and terrific scripts.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for some of the 1980s hair and clothing, this show could be aired in prime time today without question. It makes you want to go back to high school again and walk the halls with immunity because there's nothing that any gang or teacher can do to you, in theory.
In theory. This was great.
I love it. Thank you, finally.
On Jump Street.
Jump! Love what you heard on this week's episode? Well, the answer is simple. To tune into future treks with the Orchard Archives, meet up with us here next week. Same time, same place at the sweet spot. And it would mean the world to us if you could leave us a shiny review and feedback. Spreading the word really is the best way to grow our podcast and explore more iconic memories. Thank you.